Hi, Dr. Greger, and welcome to the Real Truth About Weight Loss Summit. Thank you so much for being here.
I am enthusiastically in support of anything you're involved in.
Well, thank you. So you read the medical literature. So what is the best diet for weight loss?
Well, what's most exciting is, the best diet for weight loss is the single best diet for longevity too. And I mean, so like a heart healthy diet is a brain healthy diet, is a liver healthy diet, is a kidney healthy diet, is the weight loss diet, is the diet making you want to live, allowing you to live the longest, best, healthiest life. And that is a diet that's centered around whole plant foods.
Wow. So what would that be, for example?
So, I mean, the best available balance of evidence suggests that the healthiest diet is one centered around fruits, vegetables, legumes, which are beans, split peas, chickpeas, and lentils, whole grains, nuts and seeds, mushrooms, herbs, and spices, basically real food that grows out of the ground. These are our healthiest choices.
That's amazing that the diet that is best for health is also unparalleled for weight loss. Why would that be?
Well, there's a number of reasons. So, for example, if you were to kind of imagine, so let's make a list of like the qualities one would want in a diet, right? That would be for maximum weight loss, for example, right? And then let's see what diet hits those kind of the best, right? You're actually, I'm working on a book right now on weight loss, and actually, I have a section listing all those. And so here we go. We would want a diet, and this is going alphabetically, that's anti-angiogenesis, meaning that cuts off the blood supply of tumors and also happens to restrict the blood flow to the addition of new fat cells in the body. And that's why an anti-cancer diet can also be helpful for anti-obesity. Also anti-inflammatory. Inflammation plays a role in not only the consequences of obesity, but the appearance of obesity in the first place. We would want a clean diet, low in so-called obesogenic pollutants. So these are some of these contaminants like dioxins, PCBs, etc., that may actually not just get stuck in fat tissues, but actually be involved in the accumulation of body fat. Obviously, you want a diet that's efficacious, that actually works. You want one that's high in fiber. You want one that's high in water. You want one that's low in addictive processed foods. Ideally, it'd be life extending. That'd be a little bonus. We want a low glycemic load. We want a low in calorie density, low in fat, low in meat, low in refined grains, low in salt, low in sugar, low insulin index, microbiome friendly. All these things are not just, when I say low in salt, I'm not just talking about health like for blood pressure. Low in salt actually, there's a mechanism by which diets low in salt, sugar, fat, meat actually improve weight loss. You want it to be nutritionally complete. You want it to protect against cancer, dementia, diabetes, fatty liver, heart attack, some of the leading killers. You want a diet that's rich in fruits and vegetables. That will make it more effective in terms of weight loss. One that's rich in legumes, which is to say resistant starch. One that's safe, one that's satiating, ideally one that's sustainable as well. Some of those are absolutes. Some of those would just be nice to have window dressing. But guess what? There's one diet that nails every single one of those, and that is a whole food plant-based diet.
Sounds good to me. You just mentioned that diets low in meat and salt and fat and processed foods, there's some mechanism by which they're more favorable for weight loss. What mechanism is that?
So, for example, the reason processed foods, one of the reasons processed foods are associated with weight gain and difficulty in weight loss for a number of reasons. So when we eat, white sugar, white flour, we get a spike in blood sugars that can have negative effects, and that can actually spike our insulin up. The fat, salt, sugar added to processed foods can have kind of addictive quality, make it difficult for people to pull away from this hyper salty, hyper fatty, hyper sweet palate that the processed food industry has tried to basically numb our tongue away from our, and take advantage, exploit our natural biological drive and kind of turn it against us. And they're also missing. So it's something like meat missing the fiber, high in caloric density. A lot of these things go together. And so, and you can, this is not just like following different populations, seeing how much meat they ate and how much weight you gain. You can actually do randomized controlled trials. You can take people randomized to two groups and put people on different diets, different amounts of meat. You can see what diets are better for weight loss. And you can even do isocaloric studies, I mean, giving people the same amount of food, actually the same amount of calories, different types of foods actually have a different effect on the body. In fact, even a different time of the day. One of the most interesting areas that I'm getting learning about is chronobiology, the impact of our circadian rhythms. So there's these studies done by the U.S. Army showed you give people 2,000 calories in the morning, a single meal a day, versus the exact same foods, exact same calories, 2,000 calories in the evening, and you actually gain completely different amounts of weight. Same food, same calories a day, just at a different time of the day can have a different effect. And so there's all sorts of factors. And so there's little things you can do, you can tweak, like meal frequency and timing. But the most important thing is what foods you're eating. And the healthiest foods for weight loss are those high fiber, high water, low caloric density foods. So we get the satiety before we can kind of overload our caloric intake for the day.
Wow, that was fascinating what you said about the meal timing made a difference. I'm just curious, was it more favorable to eat these 2,000 calories in the morning or in the evening?
Absolutely in the morning. So if you're going to do time-restricted feedings, some people try to kind of squeeze the window in which they're eating to like 8 hours a day. The typical way people do that is by skipping breakfast. That's exactly the opposite. In fact, you get worse in terms of physiology. So what you want is early morning time restricted feeding. So big breakfast. So we want to push our calories earlier in the day. And then if you're going to skip a meal, you skip supper. And so you keep that window earlier in the day as possible.
Wow, that's probably where they got that saying, breakfast like a king, lunch like a prince.
Oh, there we go. Like Isn't that interesting that there's some there, and that was before we had all this science.
Right. Absolutely. But what's even more important than when we eat or how much we eat is what we're eating.
Absolutely right. And so there's got to be little, just like in my book, How Not to Die, I talked about, going through the 15 leading causes of death, talk about a little diet may play in preventing, arresting, or reversing each of our top 15 killers. It all came down to really the same diet, a diet centered around whole plant foods, but for different diseases or different tweaks, different teas, different particular vegetables that seem to work. And so that's how the book wasn't half a page long. Right? This is the same thing with weight loss. My weight loss book, I've already got 170,000 words. And you say, well, wait a second. If we already figured out the healthiest diet, why is it 170,000 words? Okay, well, here's the best diet for weight loss. And then there's these little tweaks to just kind of accelerate. But you're absolutely right. The center is what you're putting in your mouth.
So why do you think there's such a resurgence in popularity of these low carb diets like paleo and keto? Because they aren't centered around plants or fiber.
Well, I think Dr. John McDougall put it best when he said people like to hear good news about their bad habits, right? So putting butter is back on the cover of Time magazine, right? I mean, it sells a lot of magazines, but it sells the public short, right? I mean, how many books are you going to sell if you put broccoli on the cover? It's just not going to happen, right? If you want to sell books, if you depend on clicks for your living, which is now more and more the media does as well, I mean, it's all about controversy. It's not about consensus. I mean, so you don't want old, boring data, eat your fruits and vegetables. Who's going to click on that, right? Who's going to buy that magazine? Oh, yeah, it may save your family's life, but where does that fit into the current kind of financial structure of how people get their news about things? So that's why we really need to sift through all this, stick to the science. And that's why I do what I do.
Right. But I think part of the problem is a lot of the people that are seeking dietary advice go to doctors that aren't familiar with plant-based diets like you are, and they tell them to do these low-carb diets because they often do result in quick weight loss or temporary weight loss. And so they seem to work, at least initially, and I think that attracts people to them. But are they sustainable, and do they compromise health in the long run?
It's not that doctors just don't know about plant-based diets. They don't know about nutrition, period. And so they're basically telling their patients, what they read at the, checkout aisle, magazine rack, basically. And so, but people, if you do surveys of people, they want information about healthy eating, not from dietitians, not from the government, from their doctor. Unfortunately, doctors suffer from a severe nutrition deficiency in education. They just weren't taught about the power simple food choices can have upon our health and longevity. And so they should just own up to their ignorance. But instead, they may pass along the latest fad. And indeed, you can lose a lot of water weight, right? Because the first thing you do is eat through your glycogen stores, and we pack the way our body packs glycogen, carbohydrate stores with a lot of water. So you get that peeing out weight loss. And so you can sell the diet by saying lose this many weight in this many days. But the problem is that's what you don't care about losing water weight, right? Because the water just comes back on. You're concerned about losing body fat. And in fact, we have these really tightly controlled studies showing low carb diets actually undermine our ability, both of this, even in the short run, a few days, in terms of actually chewing through our fat stores, even isocalorically, same number of calories, but a low carb diet makes it more difficult for you to shed body fat even within the first few days. And so the scale is lying to you. Basically, the scale is saying you're losing, water weight. But that's why we don't see people, the vast majority of people. So, for example, the National Weight Control Registry, people that have, lost about 50 pounds and kept it off for years. This is not some hotbed of low carbers, right? These people actually tend to eat, low fat diets, get, daily exercise, et cetera, other healthy behaviors.
Wow. So you talked about daily exercise, and usually when people talk to you, you're actually walking on a treadmill. How important do you think exercise is to weight loss and weight management, or is it really the food that's the most important?
Yeah, unfortunately, you can't kind of outrun a bad diet. And that, we have this sense that we're so much more sedentary. But, the studies don't seem to correlate between our activity levels and the burgeoning obesity epidemic. I mean, the food industry loves to blame obesity on inactivity, but the data really doesn't push that out. Now, in terms of weight maintenance, there's data suggesting that regular exercise can improve weight maintenance, and certainly is healthy for a whole variety of factors. I would never dissuade anybody from a regular daily exercise, but it's not the it's not the magic bullet, either for longevity or weight loss. It really is the amount of food. I mean, you do these simple calculations. You say like, okay, how many calories am I going to burn if I jog for an hour? And how many calories are in this half of a cookie? And you're just like, there's no way, right? Oh, if I jog 25 hours today, I'll be able to eat this crappy food. But like, it just doesn't, the math doesn't work out.
That's incredible. I read you have a fantastic website, nutritionfacts.org, where you have all these videos and transcripts of the videos. And one of the things I thought was interesting is you said that BMI is actually a better predictor of disease than body weight. Why would that be?
Yeah, well, because so BMI, in fact, there's even a better predictor beyond BMI, and that's probably kind of waist circumference, or the ratio between waist circumference and height, because not all body weight is the same, and that it's the abdominal fat, this visceral fat, the fat that's wrapped around and inside your organs, your internal organs, that is the most dangerous fat in terms of increasing our risk for chronic disease. Now, some people, fat is fat. For people who just want to lose weight, whether you're losing it off your thighs or your belly, it doesn't matter to people. But in terms of disease risk, it's actually critical and so the fat under your skin, the subcutaneous, the cellulite types of fat, that's less dangerous than the fat that's kind of around your intestines. Giving people these kind of hard protruding bellies, which you see kind of typical of male obesity. That's the worst kind of fat. And so by measuring waist circumference, you can get a better sense of the distribution of fat throughout the body. And of course, just straight body weight doesn't tell you anything, because you can be older, younger, taller, shorter. And you could be, you know, a fine body weight for someone who's 6 foot, but you're only 5'5". That's not such a good thing.
Well, there seems to be a push for like a health at every size movement. And yet we know that there are so many diseases that are linked to obesity. So do you think it's possible to be overweight or obese and still be healthy? Or are you greatly increasing your risk for so many of these chronic diseases?
You know, it's interesting. I was looking through all that health at every size literature, and, you know, I think it comes from a very poignant place, and that is this epidemic of weight stigma, whether it's in society in general or the medical profession itself, in terms of the discrimination and just the nastiness that gets thrown. And so there's been this kind of the backlash, um, saying, look, people should not be treated unfairly or discriminated against just because they're weight. Absolutely. But then they've taken that next step and said, oh, and by the way, it's not even that unhealthy. And unfortunately, the science does not bear that out. In fact, our obesity is the reason why we're actually seeing a reversal of the trend of longevity. The reason our kids are likely going to live shorter lives than we are is because of the obesity epidemic, increasing risk of diabetes and fatty liver, and kind of on down the list. So I'm going to have a chapter talking about the so-called obesity paradox, and unfortunately, and so I'm going to talk about weight stigma and how horrible it is. But I mean, the science is the science. It's just unhealthy to be this way. Now, I mean, at any particular weight, you can smoke or you can not smoke, right? At any particular weight, you can exercise or not. At any particular weight, but it would be better to not smoke and be ideal body weight. So there's certainly things you can do, but we really should try to bring our weight down. I mean, and it's not just kind of these chronic diseases, even joint pain, osteoarthritis of the knees, low back pain. There's a lot of conditions that are conclusively linked to excess body weight.
So what are the diseases that are so linked to being overweight or obese?
Well, you can talk about the ABCs of health consequences. A is for arthritis. Obesity can worsen rheumatoid arthritis. Another inflammatory joint disease, the so-called disease of King's, gouty arthritis, osteoarthritis attacking of the knees. B is for back pain and blood pressure. C is for cancer. As many as 3/4 of people don't realize that there's a link between obesity and cancer. But the latest comprehensive review, 1,000 studies, excess body fat actually increases risk for most cancers: esophageal, stomach, colorectal, liver, gallbladder, breast, pancreatic, uterine, ovarian, kidney, brain, etc., on and on. D is for diabetes. Obesity is the single most important risk factor for development of type 2 diabetes. E is for encephalopathy, and I talk about the cognitive deficits associated with obesity. F is for fertility, or infertility would be more likely. G is for gallstones and GERD, which is gastroesophageal reflux disease. H is for heart disease, the number one killer of men and women. I is for immunity, actually impairs your immunity. J is for jaundice because of the increased risk of liver disease, non-alcoholic fatty liver disease. K is for kidneys, increasing risk of chronic kidney disease. And I could go on and on. Even there's an X. There's it has to do with the xiphoid process. L is for lung function. M is for metabolic syndrome. On and on.
That's absolutely incredible. So, I mean, how much weight do we have to lose to be bulletproof against all these diseases? Because, you know, sometimes these height weight charts, at least for the women I've worked with, they seem like they're unattainable. So is any amount of weight we lose going to help us, or do we all have to just be?
Oh, any movement we can make. And so even, 5% weight loss is kind of considered, kind of the rule, kind of the guideline. In terms of whether or not an intervention in the peer-reviewed medical literature is successful or not at weight loss. Now, you could take a step back from that and say 5%. We have this epidemic of obesity. 5% is nothing. But hey, you can see significant improvements in diabetes risk, for example, at 2 or 3% weight loss. And so that could be just a couple pounds of weight loss can significantly decrease our risk of some diseases such as high blood pressure and diabetes. So even if you don't feel any better at just losing a little weight, you may not even see it in the mirror, you can decrease your risk of chronic disease. Ideally, though, probably an ideal BMI would be probably around 22.5.
Wow. Thank you so much. One of the things you said on nutritionfacts.org, which I found really interesting, is that eating certain meat like poultry can actually foster obesity. Why would that be?
Yeah, so that's really interesting. So this is based on, for example, the EPIC data, which is European Prospective Investigation into Cancer, second largest study ever done, hundreds of thousands of people, found that meat consumption increased risk of weight gain be above and beyond the caloric intake. It was really suggesting that two people eating the same number of calories, those eating more meat would gain more weight. And the question is why? And so, in terms of figuring out what exactly it is about meat that's so kind of weight gain accelerating above and beyond the high caloric density, the amount of calories in it, they said, well, wait a second, what meat is the worst? And interestingly, chicken. So chicken, there was so more than pork, more than other red meat, chicken consumption, poultry consumption was associated with the greatest weight gain over time. And the question is, okay, well, what is it about poultry meat then? Yes, it's fatty, but other meat is fatty too. And so there's all sorts of theories. So, for example, there's more antibiotics used in poultry production. Maybe that's affecting your microbiome. Maybe there are these obesity-causing viruses, chicken viruses. In fact, the first obesity-causing virus ever was discovered in chickens. Makes chicken fat. Does it make people fat? We don't know. But we're trying to kind of go through, like, what is it about chicken that's so fattening above and beyond kind of the calories it contains? And so I have a bunch of videos talking about the various theories. Bottom line is we really don't know. But it's hoping to give us a clue into why meat in general is more fattening than one would otherwise suggest.
So, in general, animal products just aren't favorable for weight loss, whether they're from chicken or cheese or.
And from all variety of reasons, right? I mean, they all have zero fiber. Yeah, I mean, they all. Yeah, I mean, so it's just like, yeah, I mean, so now. Having said that, I mean, there are some, that's not saying people should go out and eat Twinkies, right? Or vegan donuts or something. It's not just the animal foods that increase it. It's these, ultra processed foods, regardless of where they originally came from. But ideally, we should try to eat kind of foods as grown, kind of natural whole plant foods. At least that's really the center, the centerpiece of our diets. And again, that's for the kind of effortless weight loss combined with all the other benefits.
Isn't it great that the diet that's actually best for reversing heart disease and all these other diseases is also unparalleled for weight loss?
And no, it's not just the best for reversing heart disease. It's the only diet ever in human history proven to reverse the number one killer of men and women in the United States and around much of the world. Plant-based diet. That's the only diet ever been shown to do that. And so, I mean, if that's all a plant-based diet could do, forget the weight loss. I mean, if it just, reverse the number one reason you and all of your loved ones will die, I mean, that should be enough to get people to say, maybe that should be the default diet and to prove it otherwise.
And I agree with you. I've heard you say that eating vegetables can actually slow our metabolism and that vegans may even burn more calories when they sleep. Why would that be?
Oh, so that's very interesting, actually. So the nitrates in vegetables actually improve our metabolic rate, slow our metabolic rate, which one would think would be a bad thing. But of course, dark green leafy vegetable consumption has the most nitrates. Is not associated with weight gain, of course. But in terms of this, this like 10%. Kind of metabolic boost one gets eating plant-based. So there's an enzyme called carnitine palmitoyl transferase. It's basically the kind of fat shoveling enzyme that shovels fat into our furnace, these little mitochondria, the little power plants in our cells, is upregulated in people eating plant-based. That may be because they're eating fiber, maybe because they're eating lower fat content of their diet. So we're not exactly sure why you stick people in some what's called a calorimeter and you just measure the amount of kind of body heat they're putting off and they just kind of burn more calories in their sleep. so it may be a carb ratio thing. We're not sure, but I mean, there does seem to be an edge in terms of the other side of the equation. We already got the calories inside of the equation. In terms of the calories out, people think exercise, but actually exercise, voluntary exercise, is actually a minority of the pie chart that goes into the calories outside of the equation. Much more is just daily, just keeping you alive, even if you're lying in bed all day, just to keep your heart pumping and to keep everything moving. That burns the most. And then there's just like fidgeting and little things that can add up throughout the day. And so even if there's a tiny percent increase in that basal metabolic rate, then, I mean, that could be more, over the course of the day than many people get, going out to the gym.
You've mentioned fiber quite a few times. Why is fiber, which is only found in plants, not in animal products or processed food, why is that so important to our health, but also for weight loss?
Yeah, so I mean, we used to think of fiber only in terms of intestinal health, right? Like bowel regularity. But now we know that fiber acts as a prebiotic. Fiber is what our good gut bacteria eat. And so fiber is indigestible by us, but not by our little friends in our colon. They eat fiber and they release as a byproduct something called a short-chain fatty acid like butyrate that gets absorbed back into our system, circulates throughout our body, and does things like improves our immunity and suppresses our appetite. And so when you eat whole healthy plant foods, you're getting that fiber which your good gut bacteria can produce these magic compounds, which then go on to improve satiety. And so, eating a bean burrito tonight, getting all that fiber, people feel naturally satiated the next morning at breakfast. So they eat less breakfast, feel just as full, because by that time your gut flora is eating that burrito and is producing compounds that naturally suppress your appetite.
Nice. You mentioned beans quite a few times and the resistant starch, but so many people are afraid to eat beans because they've been told lectins are bad.
Yeah, so I would encourage people to check out a series of videos I did about lectins on nutritionfacts.org. And the bottom line is that that one need not be concerned about the lectin content of one's diet.
What would you say to somebody who's given up hope to ever lose weight?
What I would tell them is that they've been getting terrible advice, or however, weight loss. So there's this concept that some people are just are weight loss resistant. Like for some reason, like they could eat the same amount of food as somebody else and gain, and lose less weight. And there is actually some genetic variability, but basically you lock someone in a closet, everybody loses weight. In fact, everybody loses weight at the same rate. And so it's really a question of, okay, so there's certain laws of physics that you just can't break. And so it's like, what kind of advice, what have you been doing that has not been leading to weight loss? Since weight loss there's not a single person on the planet that can't lose weight under the right conditions. So therefore, what does that mean? You haven't been under the right conditions. There may be psychological blocks, reasons where you can't get yourself in the right conditions, and you may have to deal with some other stress in your life or some other issues. Completely understandable. But know that there are right conditions for optimal weight loss and longevity anytime you're ready for them.
Right. So Dr. Greger, last question. What is the real truth about weight loss?
The real truth about weight loss is that the vast majority of premature death and disability, including obesity, is preventable with a plant-based diet and other healthy lifestyle behaviors. So we have the power. That's the good news. We just need the information to put it to use, and that's why the summit is so important. Thank you so much, Chef AJ.
Thank you, Dr. Greger. Thank you so much.